And some Browns players, there was some crazy high praise for one rookie. We're going to tell you about that in a sec, after a reminder that this next segment is brought to us by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to tell you guys how I feel about trying to come up with Brandon Ayuk trades. It's been on my mind. It's weighing heavily. And you can never know what is appropriate value, what the right return is. Would San Francisco say yes? Would Cleveland say yes? And that takes a toll. So sometimes I go to my therapist to talk about different ways to let that mindset out. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get those things off your chest every once in a while. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. So visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That is BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. So, guys, Browns had a practice yesterday, and after practice, Za'Darius Smith was asked about rookie Micke Hall Jr., their second-round pick out of Ohio State. And the praise that Za'Darius Smith had for the rookie, it's pretty damn high. This is what Za'Darius Smith said in regards to Micke Hall Jr. Quote, "He's different. He reminds me of Aaron Donald a little bit. Aaron Donald is arguably the best defensive tackle in the history of football, one of the best defensive players ever in football.
That's true.
What are the chances Micke Hall Jr. could live up to 50% of Aaron Donald, which would be a great, great, great draft pick if he could even get to that level of production?" Earl?
Well, I mean, when I heard that, that's pretty high praise. And Za'Darius Smith is a veteran who's been around and seen a lot of football. I can see why he said he kind of reminds him of Aaron Donald. He has that build. You know, Aaron Donald he wasn't like the biggest dude, but he was strong, he was powerful, and he was fast on the interior. And that's what Micke Hall was drafted to be, an interior rusher. I think the question in the rundown was, what's a realistic expectation for Micke Hall this year? I think a realistic expectation for him is to be an impactful and productive rotational player on that defensive line. And if he can come out of his rookie season having a true impact on the outcome of football games, then he did his job. And if he can continue to build on that throughout his career, put in the work, have some good luck, don't have to worry about the injury bug, etc., then who knows how this thing can turn out with him having an Aaron Donald type career. But, when he said that, I knew it would raise eyebrows. But I think it's easy to look at Micke Hall, his statue, how he's built, the position he plays, how he plays that position, and say, okay, yeah, this is pretty similar to Aaron Donald, who kind of played the same way.
Man, well, the one thing that he said that you didn't put up there was, I hope he doesn't see this, something along those terms. Well,
He didn't want him getting a big head.
Yeah, guess what? Or he didn't want him to have to live up to that pressure. So I hope he doesn't see this. You can take that both ways. I don't want him to get big-headed, or I hope he doesn't realize the kind of bullseye I just put on his back. You can compare people to players, but when you go overboard, that tag sticks with you forever. And here's an example. I was working in Tampa, Florida when the Devil Rays, because that was their name then, drafted Rocco Baldelli. I think he was the first player ever drafted from the state of Rhode Island. And I remember when I saw Rocco Baldelli at spring training, they actually brought him in to take BP. Because, the draft is midseason, and they brought him in June after the draft to take BP at Tropicana Field. And I'm looking at this guy going, oh my God. If you're going to go in the lab and build a prototypical baseball player, particularly an outfielder, like this is the guy you come out with. And we watched him take back batting practice, and it was prodigious. He was, hitting the top of the dome at Tropicana Field. And I can't remember who did this to this poor kid, but because he was long and lanky and could cover a lot of ground deceptively, somebody in the media in Tampa said, he's a young Joe DiMaggio. And I thought,
come on, man.
Wow.
That's crazy.
We skipped right over Ken Griffey. We went right to Joe DiMaggio, like arguably the best to ever do it. And when you look at them, there are, you would say, okay, like physically, if I never saw either one of them play baseball, I would say, yeah, they kind of resemble one another. And the other thing was, and this was a natural comparison, they were both Italian. And I think that was where it probably came from.
Yeah.
And it just hit me the wrong way. And I thought, man, this kid is 18 years old. He is brimming with it. It just fell off his body when he walked onto the field. You could tell he had that much talent. Now, he in truth ended up being an okay player. He suffered, he's the Twins manager now. He suffered from some form of muscular dystrophy or something. He had a muscle disease, and he got fatigued, and they were running tests, and they couldn't figure it out. And he never, obviously, amounted to Joe DiMaggio, but he was not even a perennial all-star. I don't even know if he ever even made an all-star team. But he did look at the part. Don't do that to a young man. Don't do that. There are so many other players that you could have named and said, hey, he kind of reminds me of that. Now, he did say, reminds me of Aaron Donald a little bit. But now this name, Micke Hall Jr.'s name is going to be pegged to Aaron Donald in the minds of Browns fans forever. And he might end up being a really good player. I think he is, by the way. Mm-hmm. I thought he was a steal at 54 or wherever we got him. I thought he was a steal. I loved him at Ohio State. I think he's got great potential to be a really good NFL player. But please let's pump the brakes on any kind of Aaron Donald comparison. I hope I'm wrong. But I'll make that comparison after I see him play and dominate in the league for 2 years.
Yeah.
Not a couple weeks in training camp.
So I sometimes, hyperbole, I just want to give a context to, because, when I watch, my dad used to grow up and say, watch your position. So growing up being a defensive lineman, I've watched that my eye naturally goes up front because that's where you learn to watch film and you do different things. So let me just give you a little homework and a little stuff on Aaron Donald and why it is blasphemous to be saying anybody, I don't care if you got dudes in the league that's Pro Bowlers now, is blasphemous compared to Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald is the only interior defensive lineman besides John Randall with over 100 sacks. He has 111. John Randall, who's a Hall of Famer, has about 135 or so, and he was a freak of nature himself, undersized defensive tackle. He's a 3 times Defensive Player of the Year. 3. Myles Garrett got 1, and you saw how hard it was for him to get 1.
That's true.
He has 3 of those things. He is a freak of nature. He is strong, is the biggest 3 techniques in nose tackles. He's as fast in a straight line quickness just as quick as guys like Myles Garrett. He plays the run. He's a tactician. He creates his own moves inside. When you're playing defensive tackle, and he weighs pretty much. Aaron Donald probably weighs less than I do, and I would be small for a defensive tackle. This man was one of the greatest pass rushers, and not only pass rushers, he destroyed your run game as well. He destroyed it. You can't block him. It's 2 guys. He won the Super Bowl. Not a corner, not a receiver, not a quarterback.
Is he the best ever to play it?
Yes. Warren Sapp said he's the best. If Warren Sapp says you're the best, that means you're the best. He revolutionized it. He's the best defensive tackle ever to put the jersey on, and he probably could get you 8 sacks right now. He just don't want to play no more. He don't want to put his body through it. So, no, Micke Hall Jr. is not Aaron Donald. But I will say this. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. What Za'Darius Smith was trying to say was he has some of the same traits. He has some of the same. I see the get off. It reminds me of that. I saw the slight build, but the more explosive defensive tackles.
Yeah.
I see what that is. I like the fact that he's a guy that has that quick twitch, that burst, that he don't have to beat you with just being super strong. He can just beat you up the field and beat you with speed, and it looks really good because they're telling him to do exactly what he does best. When you look at Jim Schwartz's defense, every defensive lineman loves to play in it because you don't got assignments like that. Your assignment is to go raise hell. Be back there. That's all we want to just be back there. We'll play the run on the way And that's what's so great because you got people flying all around, and that is his skill set. So when he plays, he's gonna flash. He's gonna play a lot during the season. He could play outside, he could play inside. I think Micke Hall Jr. gonna be one of them dudes that you turn on and be like, who is this dude and why? And how did they get him in? What round?
Well, I hope so.
What round did they get him in?
I mean, this could be JOK Part 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, it's imperative for an organization when you give up the first-round draft picks like the Browns did.
Yeah.
You damn well better hit on those 2s and 3s. You better. And really, if you think about it, they've done that.
And
They have done that. Martin Emerson,
Yeah.
JOK, and there's others that I'm not even naming right now.
DeJuan Jones.
DeJuan Jones might end up being the biggest one of all of them.
They getting freaks of nature now.
Like, if you're Andrew Berry and you're hitting on those 2s and 3s like that, these guys, if you go back and redraft, some of them would be 1s.
You got to think about that. When Mangini and them was here, they was getting guys like Jason Trusnick and
Stop it.
they was getting guys putting them in.
Owen something. What was the fullback?
Owen Marisic,
Oh, my goodness.
Chris
By the way,
Obaniah.
Do you guys remember Ben Gay?
Yes,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
just
See that he passed away.
tragically
Yeah,
passed
R.I.P.
away. R.I.P. to
He
him.
played 1 season, I think, with the Browns.
Yeah, a cup of coffee here.
But
yeah.
I saw over the weekend.
That
and
was sad.
It was sad, yeah.
It was sad. But we getting guys that look the part. DeJuan Jones looks like a football player. Micke Hall Jr. can run. Hey, Martin Emerson is physical. JOK can run.
Andrew Berry's putting together a nice little resume of guys that maybe were under the radar for a lot of teams, but
all we need is receivers, Earl.
I
All you
wouldn't
need is
overblow.
receivers,
I wouldn't overblow what Za'Darius Smith said. I wouldn't read too much into it or think too deep on it. I think that, you know, what I said, G kind of came back to it of, you know, he's watching him on the practice field and he's seeing the prototype and he's seeing flashes of certain things that he might have seen before.
Sure.
And the first name that came to his mind was Aaron Donald. But
I keep that in my hip pocket.
I wouldn't worry about
Not
him
tell the
being.
media
I
that.
wouldn't worry about the fans kind of putting that type of pressure on him or him not being able to block out the noise. The one thing he does have in his back pocket is he's from Cleveland, and you already know to make anything of yourself from this city, you got to put on the blinders. You got to block out the noise and stay fully focused. He wouldn't have gotten to this point if he couldn't do that, and I'm pretty sure he'd have been compared to player X, player Y, player Z throughout his collegiate career, throughout the entire draft process, etc. All you got to do is just keep his head down and keep working.
I agree with that. Yeah, don't listen to the noise. Don't buy the
I wouldn't
hype.
put too much into it.
You know, you're making your reputation every day. So far, he's turned heads. By the way, it's not just Za'Darius Smith. Like, the praise for his play so far is wide-ranging. Guys, you know, in other position groups are seeing it and talking about it. So, and I think he's a great player. I loved when they drafted him. I loved watching him play at Ohio State. I thought he had slipped too far when the Browns got him. And I mean, if you're dominating the Big Ten like he dominated it for his last 2 years, you're a man. You're doing it at the highest level. And the fact that he was able to do that tells me that he has every opportunity to come into this league and be a starter and not just a contributor, a guy that jumps off the page at you. But before you make those kind of comparisons, I think you got to do something in the regular season, and then you build up to Aaron Donald, you know. But we'll see.
We are very excited to see what Micke Hall does in his rookie